And this just in, the new college football playoff rankings are out, and they look a lot like the top 10 from last week. The only change, Penn State moves up from number 11 into the 10 spot after Oklahoma, who was 9 a week ago, lost over the weekend. So Ole Miss moves up to 9, Penn State to 10, Ohio State, Florida State, Georgia, and Michigan remain the top 4, with Washington still 9-0, the only undefeated right now outside the top 4. Russ Thaler here at CBS Sports HQ. Now that the rankings are out, time to bring in the best we've got to tell us about what it means. CBS Sports CFP and bracketologist specialist Jerry Palm's here, and CBS Sports senior writer Dennis Dodd. Let's start right at the top. Jerry, Ohio State remains number 1. They had a rough go, a little bit of a hard fight there at Rutgers. Meanwhile, Georgia with a big win over a top 15 team in Missouri. Are you surprised at all that Ohio State is still number 1 here?
No, I predicted that they would be, although I would not have been surprised necessarily if Georgia had passed them. That feels kind of inevitable. The Georgia getting to number 1 feels inevitable, but not this week. And it's because Ohio State still has played a better schedule, considerably better schedule, and has got, quality wins, multiple quality wins. That was Georgia's first win over a ranked team this season. And once you get past Kentucky, the rest of their schedule is not very good. In fact, it is the lowest rated schedule of the 5 undefeated teams. So, Ohio State still belongs number 1. Michigan, a solid number 3. Georgia could have passed them. They will eventually, I think. But 4-5, that's where I would maybe take a little bit of issue. This is also inevitable. Washington, if it continues to win, will pass Florida State because Florida State's schedule is just getting worse every time they take the field. They actually still have a game left with North Alabama. That's really going to hurt. And while Washington is playing ranked teams almost every week. So if Washington keeps winning, they didn't pass them this week like I thought they would. They probably will next week.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. I think it's inevitable for Georgia if they keep winning. So it may not matter this week. My issue is that I think Ohio State out of the top 3 is probably the least complete team out of the top 3. I think Michigan's very, very strong. I think Georgia, in a very boring Georgia way without the superstars of the past, is very running, passing, defense, special teams is very, very good. Blocked the punt against Florida. I think they're better than Ohio State. Did anybody see the Rutgers game? They kind of struggled with Rutgers. Rutgers pulled a trick play on them. If not for that pick 6, maybe it's closer. That's a 14-point swing. So I think Georgia's the best team in the country. But again, it doesn't matter. If Georgia keeps winning, they're going to be there. I think something interesting to look for Georgia is that if they finish 1 or 2, if it ends up, let's say, Ohio State or Michigan number 1, they're going to be in the Sugar Bowl either way. And that's exactly where they want to be, in the belly of the beast, the SEC in New Orleans in that semifinal. Number 1, they get the choice, is my point. They will definitely go to New Orleans. If they're number 2, and that's a Big Ten team sitting there, I would almost guarantee that they choose the Rose Bowl for the other semifinal. So Georgia in the top 2 is going to be sitting pretty in that semifinal game.
Are you with Jerry, Dennis, about Washington and Florida State, that if they both continue to win, UW's going to leapfrog the Seminoles?
Yeah, I am. Washington sitting there at number 5. They got, USC was ranked, 24 last week. We know they're not a very good team right now. But they're going to play Oregon again. And if they back that up, Oregon, is the best team you never saw in the top 4 right now, in my opinion. I think they will. And he's absolutely right about the schedule. That win against LSU is way, way in the rearview mirror right now, as LSU has 3 losses. So I think that's inevitable. We've seldom had this. Jerry, I'll check with you, down the stretch having 5 undefeated teams. I know we've had them this late, but I want to know how late we've had it.
Well, we haven't had 4 at the end of the season. We've had 3. So, yeah, it's getting late for this high number of teams. But, of course, 2 of them are going to play each other in a couple of weeks, right. Ohio State and Michigan. So 4 is really the max that we can have. And I don't think it's going to end up 4.
And then you got 3 really strong one-loss teams. Dennis, you mentioned Oregon, maybe the best team out there that a lot of people hadn't seen in the top 4 yet. But right after that, you're looking at Texas, and Alabama. Both of those teams seem to be even getting better as the season goes on. Jerry, what's it going to take for one of those two teams, Texas or Alabama, to somehow get into the top 4?
Well, they're going to have to get help, but they're also going to have to make their own help, which Alabama can do. You know, Alabama could get a game against Georgia, and if they win and they're a 12-1 SEC champion, that's a pretty compelling case. Texas isn't going to get a game like that in their conference championship game. They're going to play a team with at least 2 losses. So it's not going to get as much help from them, but they won on the road at Alabama. And the committee is respecting that. And why wouldn't they? That's a huge win. That's the best win, arguably, any of these teams has in the top part of this ranking. So, you know, if Texas and Alabama are competing for a spot, Alabama's probably not going to win. Oregon probably has the best chance to play their way in because of a possible rematch with Washington. And 12-1 Oregon, who split with Washington and won the strongest top-to-bottom league in the country this year, has to be one of those 4.
There's an entire conference network programmed not only around the SEC, but I would submit around Alabama. And that network, if it's going to have this discussion tonight, has to have the discussion about Texas first, because Texas beat Alabama head-to-head early on September 9th, and what I still think may be the best, you know, win of the season for any of these schools that we're talking about. So if you want to talk about Alabama, you got to talk about Texas first. Does Texas get there? And Jerry just talked about their schedule strength, which is going to be iffy. Alabama's going to get a huge boost from Georgia. But both of these teams, as we sit here right now, are going to need help. Because if you've got top 5 undefeated, the most you can have is 4 because Michigan and Ohio State play each other. But what about Michigan beating Ohio State and both those schools getting in? So I think it's right now, I don't want to call it a long shot, but it's going to be hard for either of those schools because of the way everybody's playing above them.
Well, outside of Oklahoma, all the top 10 teams won a week ago, and Oklahoma drops out. Penn State comes in, and now the Nittany Lions are going to host Michigan. We actually have a slate that could provide some upsets this weekend in college football. So as we kind of project ahead, Dennis, I'm going to start with you. Who do you see actually ending up in that Final Four, in the playoff, when it all comes down to it?
I've got Georgia undefeated. I've got 2 from the Big Ten. I had 2 from the Big Ten to start the season. I do think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, and they're going to have enough juice left, Ohio State, to get there. And then, you know, I think at the number 4 spot, maybe Washington, because of what Jerry said. They're playing at a high level right now. I think Oregon's a more complete team, so that may be an either-or game for them. But Washington's got the best chance because they're undefeated, and Oregon has 1 loss. An undefeated conference champion for that 4th spot, if it's Florida State, is going to beat out an Oregon. So I'll go with Washington, predicting they're going to win out.
Jerry, how about yours?
My projected top 4 at the end of the season and on my bowl projections page hasn't changed in a month. It's Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Florida State staying undefeated and finishing 3rd, and then Texas 4th on the strength of the win over Alabama. The 12-1 Texas is a conference champion, and that's something in Dennis's scenario that Ohio State cannot be if they lose to Michigan or vice versa. And this committee does favor conference champions. It's a tiebreaker kind of thing, but you're talking about the team with the best win all year as a conference champion. That would be hard to ignore.
All right, so Jerry's got Texas in there at 4. Dennis is going, because of what Jerry said, he's going with UW, but Jerry doesn't have Washington in there. We're going to see how it all plays out. Much thanks to our CFP expert, Jerry Palm, and CBS Sports senior writer, Dennis Dodd. And here are the odds right now to make the college football playoff. And Michigan's got the shortest odds at this point, even though they're ranked 3rd. I don't see Ohio State on the list, but there you have it. Those are the odds. We'll be right back with more of a look at the latest college football rankings.